So post Finland, and since 2016, only Belgium several times, and Finland have beaten Denmark, which tells you all you need to know about the Christian Eriksen situation and the effect it had on the team. Since then, what have you made of the Danes?
It was a fascinating situation. Again, talking to Åge Hareide, who 34 games unbeaten, and it came to last summer, and his contract was up, and the DBU basically said the Danish Football Association went off your pop, and Kasper Hjulmand took over. So he's still a little bit disappointed. He'd love to be on the bench at Wembley tomorrow night. But this is the kind of team that they are, and this is the annoying thing in a lot of the coverage is everybody's talking about will they pose a challenge to England? Does England make the final of Euro 2020? There's a lot of people sleeping on this Danish team technically and tactically, and that's why I'm delighted that you and I can have this conversation, because I think people will enjoy the game a whole lot more now, having seen them just a little bit. Against Belgium, Joe, when they came back out, I was out in the team hotel on the Monday after speaking to you, the day after I went back out, and I saw Martin Braithwaite. They have this lovely little idyllic setup. There's basically a pitch up the road, and it could be any football pitch. There's a beautiful grass football pitch, it could be any club or school pitch, and then there's a little hall across the way that they use for their media business out in Helsingør there, and Martin was still crushed. Now, Kasper Schmeichel was, making his way back. He'd met Christian Eriksen. He'd been to the hospital at that stage. So his recovery from that trauma had begun. Braithwaite was still crushed. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, again, one of the toughest men I've ever met, he was still crushed. There were still tears in his eyes talking about that incident. And a couple of days later, they were playing against Belgium on the Thursday night. Now, they scored the first goal, went a goal up within 2 minutes, and they just didn't have the emotional energy to close out that game. You have a world-class player in Kevin De Bruyne coming in. I think it was Yannick Vestergaard and Simon Kjær both slipped in the run-up to the first goal. The second goal was just a world-class strike from De Bruyne. Yeah. But then against Russia, they, I don't know what it was, time seemed to heal the worst of the wounds from the trauma of Christian Eriksen's collapse. And my God, what a game they played. And there was 25,000 people in the Parken Stadium. Now, it usually hosts 38,000. I've been there when they qualified for World Cups. And the roar of those 25,000 people, when they came out to warm up, was the loudest thing I've ever heard in that stadium. It was just incredible. And then when they scored the first goal and the second goal, they went 2-0 up, and then Russia pulled one back through a penalty, and there was a murmur there a little while ago, oh no, we've come so close, because they need to win with 2 clear goals to make third place and have a chance of going through as one of the best third place teams. And then Andreas Christensen, who plays for Chelsea, came with an absolute sledgehammer. Not the kind of guy who scores a whole lot of goals, but he snapped up a ball outside the box and just thundered it into the back of the net. 2 goalkeepers wouldn't have stopped it. And again, this eruption of catharsis and joy. And then there was a fourth goal scored. I think it was Joachim Mähle, the wing back. He scored one on the break. I think the Russians at the corner. He scored one on the break. And again, that catharsis. They sort of knew then that they were going to make it through. And this is just an incredible turnaround in the space of, what was it? It was only a matter of days, really. It was maybe 8 days, 9 days that all this took place. And they went from being completely out of the picture, their Euros over and their playmaker possibly never going to play for them again, to making it through miraculously. And then after that, they've actually shown us what I wanted to see from Denmark. I don't want to be sitting here talking about Christian Eriksen and ICD devices and heart attacks and the effect of that. I want to talk about the brilliant football that they played and the way they used their wing backs and the midfield of Delaney and Højbjerg and the 3 at the back with Vestergaard and with Simon Kjær in there. It's an amazing team, and now finally we're getting to talk about those things.
And have they always gone 3 at the back, or is that a recent development?
No, I think actually in the first game against Finland, they may have started with 4 at the back, but it comes very, very naturally to them. So Danish football is sort of steeped in this Dutch tradition of total football. They looked at the Dutch, in particular people like Morten Olsen, who was manager for 100 years of the Danish national team. He played for Ajax. Ajax is a finishing school for Danish footballers. Christian Eriksen himself has been there. Kasper Dolberg has been there. The Laudrups were there. So this is one of those places that it just appeals to them. So they've always mimicked or had, that either 3-4-3 or 4-3-3 is something that has always been very, very close to their hearts. Now, Kasper will shift. So, sometimes it might look like they'll play 5 at the back against England, because they play with these 2 attacking wing backs. It'll be Joachim Mähle on the left side and either Daniel Vass or Jens Striger Larsen on the right. They're a little bit sort of 50-50. Those 2 guys are pretty much as good as one another. But what Kasper Hjulmand was saying today in the press conference from London was that we're not going in here as underdogs or with an underdog mentality. We're going to go in and we're going to attack, because they tried that pragmatic thing under Åge Hareide. It was terrible games against Ireland where 2 sides didn't want to attack at all. Åge is very, very pragmatic, very Norwegian, sort of 4-4-2. Let's play the ball long, let's keep it out of our half. And of course, Martin O'Neill and maybe Trapattoni before him were the same way for Ireland. But when they brought back Hjulmand, they brought back the romance of Danish football. This thing of get it on the floor. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. This is the thing with 3 centre-backs as good as the 3 centre-backs that they have in Christensen, Vestergaard and Kjær, that if you make a mistake, one of those guys is going to cover up. And that's why the first goal against Belgium was so strange, because both Vestergaard and Kjær missed out. They both slipped up in trying to stop that one. So, but they are sort of, they're reasonably powerful in defence there. They have these attacking wing backs, and that's where Hard either reckons that the game against England is going to be won and lost between the Danish wing backs and the English wing backs, because they're pretty going to mirror each other in terms of the tactics that they use and the formations that they use tomorrow at Wembley.
It's all very interesting. So in a sense, this Danish team have made a return maybe to the ethos of the 1980s golden generation. I mean, the 92 team are obviously famous for obvious reasons, but their coach was a more pragmatic type, whereas the 80s generation, the Laudrups in particular to the fore, get the ball down and play, was the way they like to approach things. So it sounds like the 2020 version, 2021, but the 2020 version is harking back to that 80s tradition.
Very much so. And the interesting thing about that, or the person who encapsulates that for me, is Mikkel Damsgaard. So when Christian Eriksen collapsed, they brought in, was it Mathias Jensen, I think, who took Eriksen's place when they restarted the game. So that substitution was made. And Jensen kind of disappeared under the waves. Mentally or emotionally, he wasn't really able for it. So he was dropped to the bench for the next game. And they brought in Mikkel Damsgaard, who plays on the wing for Sampdoria. Now, Mikkel is 20 years of age, and there is not an ounce of fear in the boy. He just doesn't care, right? If he tries dribbling somebody, they take the ball off him, he doesn't care. He'll try and go, if he went left the first time, he'll go right the second time. He got booked, I think, in the game against Belgium for an absolutely hysterically bad dive. Didn't care. Even the crowd, the 25,000 people in Packham were laughing at it. Didn't care. Then in the next game against Russia, he came out and he scored an absolutely world-class goal to steady the Danes' nerves and to open the scoring against the Russians, which is absolutely crucial. And he'll do the same thing again tomorrow night. It won't bother him one iota that the 60,000 people there, 52,000 of them are going to be English men and English women cheering on their team. He's just going to go out there and play his game as if he's playing, on the playground at home. And that really is a throwback to the 1980s when they looked at this Dutch philosophy. And back in the early 80s, of course, Morten Olsen himself was still playing, and he was going, we're as good as this. Is not difficult. If you get the ball and knock it around, if you play these triangles the whole time, it's actually impossible for the other team to get the ball off you. Let's try that. And they had the physicality to match that. And once they developed that, the tactical idea of it, and they are technically very, very good players. You very seldom see them take a bad touch. With very few exceptions. Andreas Cornelius, perhaps, striker who come off the bench, he's a bit more, the standard English number 9 centre forward. But for the most part, they're well able to play with the ball at their feet. And to go back to that then means an awful lot to the Danish people. So under Hareide, the team did really well, didn't lose any games, but it didn't win any fans either. And that was the hard part for them, because they're so steeped in this tradition of getting the ball down. They look at the Swedes and they laugh. And they look at the Norwegians and they laugh at the primitive football that they play. So they want to play this romantic football. They want to win, of course. They want to get to the final, but they want to do it playing the right way.
I'm looking forward to the game more now, I must say, because I wasn't sure what approach the Danes would take. I certainly would be confident in saying that Gareth Southgate will be pragmatic to the end here. That is pretty much his approach, and he's sticking to it. So it'll be interesting to watch the Danes potentially take the initiative here against England in front of 60,000 English people, and to see how the mood in the stadium reacts to that, because like you say, I don't think the 60, 70,000 English fans heading to Wembley tomorrow are anticipating Denmark to dominate this game or to take the attacking initiative. They are, already counting down to the final, I think, realistically.
Well, I think in everything I've seen or consumed this week, as the modern word has it, in English media, it literally has been that. People are calling me up, and they're going, well, tell us about that so we can get that out of the way and move on to Italy or Spain in the final, And no matter how hard you try to tell them, Joe, they just won't listen, And I keep telling them that these are no pushovers. And the other thing, of course, that we forget is that Kasper Schmeichel hasn't had a Kasper Schmeichel game just yet. Those games where he comes out with the S on his chest as the absolute superhero, like he did in, I think it was the cup final there in Wembley. He hasn't had to do that just yet. And if he is ever going to do that, as a young man who spent most of his life growing up in England, dying to play for the Danish team, there was never an idea that he would have been able to play for England because of naturalisation and citizenship and these things, I'm sure. But of course, there was never a dream of that. He wanted to be like his father Peter, who won the European Championship in 1992 with Denmark. And I would fully expect him to go out there against the likes of Harry Kane tomorrow and want to show these people what they're missing. So it really is. There's so many things that the English can trip over there tomorrow. But I honestly believe that it is what you're saying, that if Gareth Southgate goes out there, armed with data and all this kind of thing, it's okay, if we just do this in the first 20 minutes and this in the second 20 20 minutes. I honestly think that tomorrow night in knockout football, the semi-final stage of major tournaments, fortune favours the brave. Now, England have wonderful attacking players, but Denmark have wonderful defenders. And they also have this thing of the fact that they're still in this tournament at all is a miracle in its own way. So they have absolutely nothing to lose. You know, if they get knocked out tomorrow night, nobody in Denmark is going to love them any less. But if they go to the final again, as they did in 1992, their names are going to be in the history books forever. It's going to be one of the most amazing achievements, not just in Danish football, but in any football, anywhere in the world.
Yeah. It's funny, we've Brian Laudrup on the show on Thursday. I'll be talking to him for about an hour. I can't wait. So I've been immersed in Euro 92 over the last couple of days, and
oh man,
it's
fantastic.
Just so phenomenally interesting, and it really makes you believe strange things can happen again. One last point or concern, Philip, then. So on the footballing side of things, I've far fewer worries about Denmark now. The emotional toll of the Eriksen situation, and then just the toll full stop of going through a tournament and playing all these games. You looked at England against the Ukraine, and on the hour mark, Rice and Phillips had been substituted. Sterling was taken off. They all had their feet up from pretty early on in this game. So you would think they're pretty fresh. And Southgate, in fairness to him, has rotated brilliantly across the tournament. Only Pickford has played every minute. How are the Danes by comparison, do you suspect, on an energy front?
This is the one thing that would worry me, Joe, is the energy levels, right? So you're talking about Thomas Delaney, who has been, a fixture in the Danish team for many years, real high energy player, and he's a defensive midfielder who sits slightly to the left, and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg sits to the right. Now, I can't ever remember him being substituted with any regularity before, but now that's starting to happen. In the 65th, the 70th, the 75th minute, he's starting to go to the bench, and that's not good. Simon Kjær, of course, he came out of the game against Finland. Mostly he wasn't fit to continue, and he considered not playing the game against Belgium. Daniel Vass has been switched out now, and Jens Sigurd Larsen has come in. I don't know if that's to do with energy or if it's just how he's performing in training. I haven't been able to find that out. That is the one thing that would worry me. In terms of attacking players, the Danes have a whole heap of players that we haven't even seen yet. You have Robert Skov, who has a tremendous left foot. He's one of these left-footed wingers that likes to play on the right. Tremendous at dead balls, and if we're taking penalties, you're going to want that fella in the team as well, because he'll put the ball out the back wall of Wembley if he has a chance. So there is a little bit, but in that key position of the central midfield, I would worry about the energy. They played in immense heat in Baku the other night against, it was a tough game against the Czechs. It was an ugly game. It was a game they really had to work hard just to hold on to the 2-1 win. But that said, what's usually said these days in football is it takes 72 hours to get over it. But the energy that the Danes play with as well, because they press very hard. And this is something that maybe England haven't seen just yet. Not even Germany managed to press. They didn't do this gegenpressing thing that they normally do. So, I really think that, this is just who Hjulmand is. This is just who the Danes are. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at them for the 90 minutes, and if legs run out, okay, next man up, let's go. If it has to be, Skov Olsen or Skov or whoever's coming off the bench, let's just bring them in there. Cornelius, Jonas Vind has barely figured this at all. The striker's a really good player, throw them all on there. But I do think that we're only talking about 2 more games. We're possibly only talking about 1 more game. And I reckon that's going to be the message to them in the dressing room tomorrow night. It's going to be, look, lads, forget about the final on Sunday, right? This is Wednesday. There's nothing after this. This is it. So you go out there and you leave everything out there and you put everything you have into beating England, because if you don't do that, there is no tomorrow. And I can imagine with the kind of men that are in that team, that's what they're going to do. And to be honest, I just can't wait for kickoff tomorrow night.
Philip O'Connor, great stuff. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you, Joe.